Now, this is an interesting one. Whenever the American president, I guess, moves, draws breath, or says something, it's recorded and reported by the White House press corps, many of whom accompanied him on his visit to South Africa just recently. So, what are the logistics behind this massive media machine? With us now, press spokesman for the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria. What's the purpose of the White House press corps? What does it actually do?
Well, the White House Press Corps, actually, it's an association of the media that is accredited to the White House. Obviously, as you and your listeners would know, there's a lot of interest in covering the President of the United States. And so there's a whole organization designed to support, to make sure that the White House Press Corps has access to the President and that the rules and regulations are agreed upon beforehand.
Let's talk about those rules and regulations. I'm assuming there are specific rules of engagement that have been agreed to.
There are. Essentially, I think many people would be interested to find out that inside the White House itself, down the hall from the President's office, is where there are commercial media always. They work in a space that is U.S. government property. They have areas that are designated to them. Their press room is actually down below the Oval Office. They are there at all times. They can run into people in the hallways. Now, of course, how they act when they're in the West Wing of the White House determines their access as well.
I would imagine that break the rules and you could very well find yourself on the White House lawn or off the White House lawn. It was quite interesting, though, when President Obama was here at the start of the news conference with President Zuma, he was quite self-deprecating, quite humorous about the actual geography, the confines of that White House press room compared to what he was in at the Union buildings. How cramped is this room?
Well, the space for the commercial White House press in the West Wing is very small. Yeah. In fact, you have the top journalists in America making, one could guess, millions of dollars, and they're in cramped little cubicles. Now, the White House traditionally has offered to build additional space in the executive building right across the street, and they don't want to go because, as you know, for many journalists would know, that proximity is power.
I know exactly. So the closer you are to power, the more access it is, the easier it is to operate.
And they realize that, and they say, thank you very much, we're fine here, we won't complain.
Back to those rules of engagement. Is it an adversarial relationship or is it a cooperative relationship, perhaps a bit of both?
Well, that's one of the things I think, I can speak to here. It's cooperative because we understand that selling the message, that getting the message out there requires the media. But, of course, we can't control what they write about. We can't control what they report on. So, in some ways, it's very much cooperative. But in other ways, obviously, they are trying to get a story out of it. So, there are issues back and forth. But absolutely, we realize from the U.S. government is that the media are our partners in this message.
And that crucial interface between the press corps and the White House spokesperson. Again, interesting parallels to be drawn with the situation in South Africa. Again, often a testy relationship.
Well, I think that you can't help but have that. But I think, again, the most important thing is that we recognize their need to be here. And we, those of us who worked overseas in the embassy on the trip with President Obama just last week, we worked very hard to help to accommodate, to make sure that the media were involved in everything. For example, the town hall.
I'll talk about the town hall in just a moment, but any big overseas trip, but most notably the recent one to South Africa. How many reporters did you bring from America? Do they travel on Air Force One? And what sort of access do they have to the president on board?
Well, as you can imagine, space is tight. So the agreement with the White House press corps is that wherever the president goes, wherever he travels, there will always be a pool, a media pool of approximately 13 people. Now, that's video crew, radio pooler, a print pooler, magazine pooler, and some of the major outlets.
How do you choose them?
They choose them in the White House. There's a negotiation. I think it has changed over the years. There's 5 major broadcasters in the U.S., and they all take turns. But the pool is with the president at all times. Unfortunately, it comes out of President Kennedy's assassination in 1961. Since that time, there has been a U.S. press pool with the president on Air Force One. They travel in the helicopters when they're here. They travel in every motorcade. They're there sitting, waiting for him to come out of his vacation. So they're always with him. In addition to that pool, which always travels with the president, we accommodated an entire airplane with additional White House press that was about another 100 people. They pick people up as they go, but in total, the contingent of White House press for the presidential visit here to South Africa was between 150 and 200 journalists.
Access on Air Force One itself, do they ever see the president?
Yes, they're in the back, and you may have seen a readout. The president does actually come back and brief the press on Air Force One. He did on the flight from Senegal here to South Africa. There's a transcript on the White House website. He will generally walk back in the plane. Reporters will gather around. A stenographer will be there, and he'll take questions.
The town hall event that you've just spoken to yourself, it took some planning, didn't it?
It took an amazing amount of
Tell us
planning,
about it.
and we have to thank ENCA for help with that. Well, actually, myself and a colleague went in and spoke with ENCA about 2 months ago about this idea, and then from there it took on a life of its own. And we planned it. We looked at the sites and chose the site in Soweto. Obviously for its space, but one of the things in mind was we wanted to have a large audience, but we wanted to be able to accommodate a large number of media. Now that's the White House media coming with, but also local media. So we're very happy that we're able to build the event so that they could all access the event and see it.
Massive security sweep, I would imagine, before this event took place. And also, I understand, almost something like a construction audit. You wanted to see whether the building was safe.
Yes, there were some issues involved because obviously you choose a site and then you realize what you have to work with. So yeah, there were a lot of vendors involved in constructing the set, the cameras, the lights, the sound system. It was quite a big operation, but it came off flawlessly.
Thank you very much for joining us, a U.S. Embassy spokesman based in Pretoria. Remember, all our interviews will be live on the web, enca.com, also on our Facebook page later in the week. Goodbye to you.
News that moves. enca.com.